welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah, to be here.
So, today our mission is to understand, well, the crushing psychological weight of duty.
Right.
We are looking at the invisible machinery of state power and really the ultimate battle for individual freedom.
It's a heavy topic, but a fascinating one.
Definitely. And to do that, we're looking at the brilliant Turkish translation of Stefan Zweig's 1920 masterwork. It's called Mekberiyet.
Originally titled Der Zwang in German, or Compulsion.
Right, Compulsion. And we're grounding our discussion today in the translator's preface by Gulperi Sert,
Yeah, she points out something really crucial right away.
which is that this intensely anti-war story carries some deep autobiographical traces, right?
Exactly. Traces of Zweig's own time spent in exile during the First World War.
Which makes it feel incredibly personal.
It really does. It is a remarkable piece of literature because, well, it doesn't focus on the battlefield.
No muddy trenches or explosions.
Right. Instead, it examines the battlefield of the mind. It looks at a man who successfully fled a world war, only to discover that the bureaucratic grip of his homeland might actually be stronger than his own biological instinct to survive.
Which is wild. And before we get into the actual details of the story, I want you, listening to this, to just picture a scenario for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, you are standing in your home on a perfectly normal, quiet morning. The sun is shining. Your coffee is brewing.
Sounds nice.
Right? You open your mail, pull out a piece of paper, read a few typed lines, and suddenly your stomach just drops into your shoes.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Your whole body runs cold. It might be an IRS audit notice or a legal summons or, I don't know, a jury duty threat. Have you ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely.
That feeling where you were suddenly forced to do something you fundamentally disagree with simply because an authority figure, or literally just a piece of paper, told you to.
It is a profound, almost violent psychological shift.
Yeah.
Because the physical object, that piece of mail, is entirely harmless. I mean, it is just a few grams of wood pulp and ink.
Exactly. Just paper.
But the invisible authority it represents is terrifyingly heavy. It immediately reconfigures your entire sense of safety and autonomy.
You realize you are not as free as you thought you were. Okay, let's unpack this, because that is exactly where we find our protagonist, Ferdinand.
Poor Ferdinand.
Yeah. He is a painter who has escaped the sheer industrialized slaughter of World War I to live with his wife, Paula.
And they are living in a neutral, peaceful village near Lake Zurich in Switzerland.
So physically, he has achieved the ultimate goal. He made it out. He is in a neutral country. He is completely safe.
Physically, yes, he is perfectly safe. And Zweig goes out of his way to describe the setting as almost aggressively idyllic.
Oh yeah, seagulls gliding over the blue lake, little steamboats humming along.
Church bells ringing in the distance. It is a portrait of absolute peace.
Right.
But the contrast Zweig builds is that inside Ferdinand's mind, it is an absolute horror show.
The anxiety is just suffocating him. He cannot paint. He can't focus.
He just paces around his house like a trapped animal.
There is this one incredibly visceral detail where he takes off his shoes and just sits on the edge of the bed holding them.
Just holding them.
Yeah, completely frozen until his hands go totally numb and the shoes literally just drop to the floor.
It's so cinematic. He feels like he's being hunted by an invisible eye.
What's going on there psychologically?
Well, what's fascinating here is how Zweig is illustrating that trauma and the social conditioning of the state do not require physical borders.
Right, because he's technically free.
Exactly. Ferdinand crossed a geographic border to get into Switzerland, but he never crossed the psychological one.
Wow.
He has internalized the state's gaze. It is a form of self-surveillance. He doesn't need a guard standing outside his door because the guard is inside his own head, just waiting for the inevitable.
And the inevitable finally arrives in the most mundane, everyday package imaginable.
The local postman.
The postman. Ferdinand actually has a joking nickname for this guy. He calls him Nussnacker.
Which means nutcracker.
Nutcracker, right. Because the postman is incredibly serious and always carries this big, heavy, black leather bag.
But on this particular foggy morning, the joking totally stops.
Yeah, the postman hands him a brown envelope with an official stamp.
And the physical reaction Ferdinand has to this envelope is deeply revealing. I mean, he is so paralyzed by fear that his fingers go completely numb.
He actually drops the envelope into the wet dirt.
Yeah, he can barely hold the pen to sign his own name on the delivery receipt.
Because it is a conscription notice. It's a direct order demanding he report to the consulate in Zurich for a medical exam to determine his fitness for the military.
which means the war has found him.
But I want to pause here for a second because this is where that IRS analogy really hits home for me. How can a mere piece of paper hold so much power over a legally free man sitting in a neutral country?
Well, because the state has already conditioned him to obey. The letter isn't the weapon. The letter is just the trigger.
The trigger for his conditioning.
Exactly. Ferdinand actually has a brief moment where his rational brain kicks in. He tells himself, he could just tear the paper up.
Just rip it up.
Right. He could throw it into Lake Zurich, go back inside, and the world wouldn't end. No one is there to arrest him.
He's in Switzerland.
But his muscles refuse to obey his rational mind. The conditioning is neurological. He realizes that the state is this anonymous mechanical force that doesn't even need to yell or threaten you.
It just reaches out with a polite piece of paper and expects your compliance.
Exactly.
And that terrifying realization triggers an immediate explosive fallout inside his home. And this is where the story shifts from internal dread to this intense philosophical clash between Ferdinand and his wife, Paula.
Yes, Paula. She represents fierce, unyielding individualism and just absolute moral clarity.
She does not sugarcoat anything.
Not at all. To her, the state isn't some holy, abstract entity that deserves reverence. She strips away all the political jargon and flat out calls it a murder machine.
And just to be clear to our listeners, we're just imparting the ideas from Zweig's novella here. We're not endorsing any specific political viewpoint, right or left. We are just exploring how the characters view state power.
Of course. Within the world of the story, Paula argues that no clerk's typed paper has any power over a living, breathing human being.
Unless
that human voluntarily surrenders to it.
And she does not hold back on Ferdinand. She reminds him of his own past vows, all those passionate anti-war essays he keeps hidden in his desk drawer.
The ones where he swore he would never pick up a weapon.
Exactly. She even takes the conscription notice and literally throws it away in disgust. But hold on, I actually have to push back on Paula here a little bit.
How so?
Well, it just feels incredibly unfair to Ferdinand. I mean, she gives him this brutal ultimatum. She tells him she loves him for his free will, and she will not share him with a blood-sucking state.
Right, she draws a hard line. Them or me.
Right, if he goes to the consulate, she will despise him. But isn't she demanding moral purity from a guy who is facing the very real threat of treason charges?
It's easy for her to say.
Exactly. It's easy for her to call the state a murder machine from the comfort of her cozy Swiss living room, right?
Yeah.
She's not the one who will be put in front of a firing squad if they ever go back home.
That is a very valid critique of her position, and it's one Ferdinand feels acutely. He really feels she is being unsympathetic to the crushing weight he is under.
So how does he react?
Well, Ferdinand keeps retreating into these abstract masculine ideologies. He talks about duty and politics and ethics.
Trying to intellectualize it.
Yeah, he tries to explain to her that he is just a cog in the machine, that the forces at play are just too big for one man to resist.
He actually uses this heartbreaking analogy. He says he wants to resist. Every cell in his body hates the war. But he feels this McBuriot.
This absolute compulsion.
Right. He compares himself to a terrified schoolboy who just automatically stands up when the teacher calls his name.
And that is the exact psychological mechanism Zweig is exposing. The schoolboy doesn't stand up because the teacher is physically forcing him.
Right.
He stands up because years of behavioral conditioning have made the response automatic. His will just dissolves the moment authority speaks.
But Paula rejects that as a cowardly excuse. Here's where it gets really interesting, because Paula shifts the argument away from just his personal duty and introduces the concept of complicity.
Yes. This raises an important question about how power actually works.
The idea that doing nothing is still doing something.
Exactly. Paula argues that the terrifying machine Ferdinand is so afraid of doesn't actually exist as an independent entity.
It's not a real monster.
Right. The state only has power because millions of individuals, exactly like Ferdinand, are too paralyzed by abstract words like patriotism to just say no.
So the machine is fueled entirely by the polite compliance of ordinary people.
That's her argument. She is telling him that by submitting to this compulsion, he isn't a victim at all. He is a silent accomplice to murder.
Wow. Okay, so Paula's ultimatum sounds brilliant and airtight in the safety of their living room.
Sure.
But an intellectual argument is totally different from physical defiance in the real world.
It always is.
So Ferdinand decides he is going to go to Zurich to report to the consulate anyway, but he plans to make a defiant, heroic stand.
Yes, he spends hours walking around Zurich, mentally rehearsing this incredibly brave speech.
We've all done that.
Oh, totally. He decides he's going to look the military attaché right in the eye and say, I know my duty.
He is very proud of that line.
He is, because it has a clever double meaning. He means his duty to humanity, not his duty to the state.
He even tries to weaponize his wardrobe for this big moment. He goes to a barber for a fresh haircut. He agonizes over what color gloves to buy.
Which is such a funny detail.
It is. He ultimately chooses this sophisticated silver gray over yellow because he thinks yellow is too flashy. He buys a walking stick.
He is trying to build this armor of bourgeois status. He thinks it'll protect him from being swallowed by the system.
Which is a deeply human reaction.
It really is. He is trying to assert his individuality against a bureaucracy that is designed specifically to strip away individuality and just turn him into a number.
But when he actually steps into that consulate, all that living room bravery just completely evaporates.
It vanishes.
And reading this, I kept thinking about the last time I had to go to the DMV. Or maybe a massive corporate HR department.
Oh, no.
You know, you go in angry, you have all your arguments lined up about a fee or a mistake, and then you sit in those hard chairs under the fluorescent lights for an hour.
The environment just exhausts your will to fight.
Exactly. By the time your number is called, you just want to pay the fine and leave.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what happens to Ferdinand.
It is the architecture of compliance. When he arrives, he is forced to wait in a room filled with desperate, broken people begging for passports and favors.
Just soaking in the misery.
Yeah, the waiting drains his rehearse energy. Bureaucracies use time and waiting as a tool to establish dominance.
And when he finally gets called into the office to see the attaché, there is no dramatic philosophical duel.
No grand debate.
The official doesn't yell at him or threaten him. He barely even looks at him.
Because bureaucracies don't fight you. They process you.
Process you. Wow.
The attaché just breezes through the paperwork, assumes Ferdinand is eager to serve his homeland, and simply signs his medical orders.
He even politely offers Ferdinand an extra day or two to let the paint dry on his canvases before shipping out.
Which is so casually brutal.
But politeness is so patronizing. And Ferdinand's grand intellectual rebellion just completely folds. He doesn't deliver his epic, I know my duty line. He meekly takes the papers.
Just takes them.
And this is the part that made me want to scream when I read it. He actually says thank you to the official who just signed his death warrant.
Yep.
Why? Why does he thank him?
Well, because of the psychology of social scripts. We are all deeply conditioned to follow the rules of a civilized office interaction.
Even when our life is on the line.
Even then, you walk into a room, a polite clerk hands you a document, your brain's default neurological script is just to say thank you.
That is insane.
The state leverages his own good manners against him. To rebel in that moment, Ferdinand wouldn't just be fighting the military. He would be violating his own deeply ingrained habit of being polite.
Oh.
And for many people, the fear of causing a social disruption is actually stronger than the fear of physical harm.
That is a terrifying thought. The greatest weapon the state has isn't the military. It's our desire not to make things awkward.
Exactly.
So Ferdinand fails the intellectual test with Paula, and he completely fails the bureaucratic test at the consulate. He is now literally on the conveyor belt to the trenches.
Which brings us to the train station, where the narrative shifts from administrative dread to physical reality. Paula intercepts him at the station, and she does what Ferdinand couldn't do in the consulate. She completely discards all social conventions.
She violently wrestles him for his backpack right there on the platform.
Exactly. She creates a massive, embarrassing public scene.
And the locals are just standing around laughing at them.
They think it's funny.
Yeah, they think it's a domestic comedy shouting things like, "Run or she'll beat you." And Ferdinand is so overwhelmed by the sheer shame of people staring at him that he drops the bag and flees onto the train.
Think about that for a second.
I know. He is running toward a literal war zone where he will likely be blown to pieces, entirely because he's too embarrassed to be yelled at by his wife in public.
Social embarrassment is a stronger motivator than literal survival.
It is a profound psychological insight by Zweig. Ferdinand escapes into the war machine just to avoid public judgment.
And once he is on the train, he describes feeling totally dead inside. He's operating purely as an automaton, disconnected from his own will.
But then the train arrives at the border station.
The geographic threshold?
Right. He steps off the train, and he can actually see the bridge that marks the border. Just 800 meters away is a completely different reality.
A different world.
Yeah, on his side of the bridge, men are drinking coffee and reading newspapers. Just across those wooden planks, men are being forced to murder each other in the mud.
And he starts having these almost childlike thoughts about the absurdity of imaginary lines drawn on a map.
I loved this part. He wonders if the fish in the river know they are swimming from a zone of peace into a zone of war.
Right, or if a dog crosses the bridge, is it suddenly subject to martial law?
So what does this all mean?
Well, he is seeing the absurdity of the nation-state in its most naked form. The border is a shared fiction, but it is a fiction that demands blood.
Right.
However, even this intellectual realization isn't enough to break his compulsion. Abstract thoughts cannot defeat deep conditioning.
Oh.
The actual turning point requires a visceral, physical shock.
And that shock arrives on the opposite track. While he is standing there, dreading the train that will take him into the war, a train arrives from the other direction.
And incredibly, the soldiers on board are playing the Marseillaise, the French national anthem.
Which is incredibly jarring, considering they are at the border of the German-speaking powers. But this is a Red Cross train.
Ah, yes.
It is filled with horribly wounded, mutilated French prisoners of war who are being exchanged into neutral Switzerland. They are the supposed enemy.
The visual contrast is just staggering. You have this pristine, quiet Swiss landscape, and then this train full of men who have been chewed up and spat out by the very machine Ferdinand is about to willingly feed himself into.
There are missing limbs, their faces are heavily bandaged, they look starved.
But the moment their train crosses that invisible line into Switzerland, there is this explosion of pure ecstasy.
One soldier with a wooden leg literally clings to a post and cries out, La Suisse, Dieu soit béni! Switzerland, Switzerland, God be praised.
It is raw, unfiltered human relief. And this is the moment the abstract ideology of the state finally collapses in the face of human reality.
Ferdinand approaches the train and sees a solitary, severely wounded French soldier lying on a stretcher.
No one is attending to him.
No. The man's paralyzed arm is just dangling off the side of the stretcher, swinging uncomfortably.
And Ferdinand walks over.
He leans down and very gently lifts the man's dangling arm and places it safely back onto his chest.
And the soldier opens his eyes, looks at this stranger, a man from the enemy nation, and smiles with this profound, transcendent gratitude.
That silent interaction changes everything. Paula's brilliant philosophical arguments couldn't stop him.
The bureaucratic maze of the consulate trapped him.
But this single physical exchange of humanity with the enemy completely shatters the spell of the state.
Yes.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, why does that specific moment work when everything else failed?
Because the concept of the enemy relies on distance and abstraction. It is easy to pledge your duty to a flag in a polite office, but looking directly into the eyes of a suffering human being breaks the abstraction. Ferdinand realizes in his bones that to put on a military uniform is to agree to look at fellow human brothers with hatred.
Wow.
He realizes that the state's demand isn't just about his own death, it's a demand that he destroy others.
So the compulsion to obey the state is finally broken by a much older, deeper compulsion.
Empathy.
Empathy. The physical reality of human suffering nullifies the artificial concept of patriotism.
It cures him instantly. Right there on the platform, he reclaims his agency.
He gives all the money in his wallet to the wounded soldier.
And then he reaches into his pocket, pulls out that brown conscription notice, the piece of paper that held so much terrifying power over him just a few hours ago, and he tears it to shreds.
Just lets the pieces fall right onto the train tracks. He doesn't care who sees him. The compulsion is dead.
He refuses to be a polite cog in the murder machine anymore. By breaking the rules of the state, he regains his humanity.
And the ending of the novella is just incredibly poignant. Ferdinand doesn't get on the train to the war. He walks back.
He makes his way back to his village, back to his darkened house.
And Paula is there, waiting in the dark. They don't even need to speak. The shared silence between them is no longer filled with that suffocating dread we saw at the beginning.
No, it is filled with deep relief and connection.
They stand by the window, looking up at the stars, and Ferdinand realizes that the only true law is the one they make for themselves, through love and human connection.
They are completely free from the artificial, destructive laws of men.
It is a beautiful, hard-won resolution.
It really is. Zweig leaves us with the understanding that true freedom is not a geographic location.
You don't become free just by crossing a border into a neutral country.
Exactly. Freedom is a constant active choice to prioritize human connection over abstract institutional obligations.
Which brings this entire deep dive right back to you listening to this right now.
Yeah, how does this apply today?
Well, we may not be facing a World War I conscription notice, but we all deal with systems that demand our obedience.
all the time.
Think about the paper chains in your own life. Those official demands, those corporate expectations, those societal rules that make your stomach drop when you think about stepping out of line.
The things we just accept because they are handed to us politely.
Right. Zweig's story challenges you to look at those chains and realize they only have power if you believe in them. The ultimate takeaway here is almost terrifying, honestly.
Because authoritarianism, or really any oppressive system, doesn't succeed just because of soldiers with guns.
No, it succeeds because of polite clerks, quiet offices, and our own deep-seated fear of causing a public scene.
That's the real trap.
So what happens the moment you decide to simply stop being polite? The next time an invisible authority demands you compromise your humanity, remember Ferdinand. You might just find that the piece of paper threatening your reality is nothing more than wood pulp and ink after all.